Hello, welcome everyone. Hi. Oh, thank you. Come on in, grab a seat. Good evening. My name is Jesse Morandi, and I'm the director of the Digital Humanities and Digital Exhibitions Department here at Bard Graduate Center. In an institution that is dedicated to innovation and innovative ways of thinking about decorative arts, design, history, and material culture, my department focuses on leveraging emerging digital tools and methodologies to support the creation, investigation, and public dissemination of new modes of scholarship. Whether in the classroom or in exhibition space, we embrace the potential the digital tools hold for expanding perspectives and pathways of investigation, for forging new collaborations and experiences, and for making visible the histories and people connected to the objects we research and interact with every day. It is also through this work that we hope to create opportunities for discovery, experimentation, inspiration, and maybe, just maybe, a little bit of magic. So it is with that sentiment in mind that I am so incredibly excited to welcome Beatrice Glow to the Bard Graduate Center. Beatrice is an American multidisciplinary artist of Taiwanese heritage whose practice spans sculpture, installations, textiles, olfactory experiences, virtual reality sculpting, and participatory performances. Bridging both public history with just futures, she questions historical forms of visual and material culture, often in collaboration with indigenous culture bearers, researchers, and museums, in order to reinterpret historic collections through contemporary and community based lenses. So I first encountered Beatrice's work through her exhibition When Our Rivers Meet at New York Historical last year, which she developed with the curator of material culture at the museum and BGC alumni, Rebecca Klassen. Hi, Rebecca. Responding to archival research done with the museum's holdings, Glow created objects that blended digital processes such as virtual reality sculpting and 3D printing. And if you don't have any idea what that means, you'll learn more about it, so stay tuned. With meticulous handcrafting. It was an exhibition that integrated the physical and digital in a manner that I had never encountered before, one that amplified the complexities of objects in both worlds and that challenged and even subverted her audience's interpretive practices. Tonight, we'll hear more about this exhibition and experience Glow's current work in progress, Guilt, a performance installation imagined as a speculative auction. So please join me now in welcoming Beatrice Glow.
Let's bring this microphone down a little. Andrew did tell me you're tall. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me in the back well? Okay. Well, thank you, Jesse, for the kind introduction. I also want to thank the BGC community kindly welcoming me to this wonderful space of learning. And also, thank you, Rebecca, for introducing my work to Jesse. So without further ado, we're going to launch into the presentational and, as Andrew said, then the liminal. My name is Beatrice Glow. I am a multidisciplinary artist. My practice centers on bridging invisibilized histories around themes of land, lineage, labor, and trade to more just futures. I often get to collaborate with archives and culture bearers, and we have elders in the room today, to expand contemporary perspectives on collections. Today, I'll discuss several recent and ongoing projects that, through a process of historical inquiry paired with the creative process of virtual reality sculpting, open up, hopefully, new interpretations and reimaginings of futures ahead. So, to begin, I'm so stoked to be here at BGC because back in 2009, I see some folks recognizing this, on the occasion of the 400th anniversary of Henry Hudson's arrival in New York, Bard Graduate Center and New York Historical co-curated an exhibition, Dutch New York Between East and West, the World of Margaretha van Berg. Through a lengthy inventory list of Margaretha van Berg's belongings at the time of her death in the late 17th century, the curators reconstructed fragments of her life as a textile merchant in Flatbush, Brooklyn, selling goods from the regions throughout Asia that were under the control of the Dutch East India Company at the moment. While I didn't get to see the exhibition in person, the exhibition catalog has been a reference point for my own work. Yet, while it was amazing to see how much info we can learn about global circulations of the Dutch Empire through the Van Werk's objects, part of me also felt a larger void of information on many other lives that were cohabiting the region. A little bit about my personal background. My maternal ancestry spans 24 generations to Sentimen, an indigenous village in southern Taiwan, a cultural crossroad of the Paiwan nation. In Paiwan, the word for artist is pulima. Pulima, can everyone say that together? It means someone skilled with their hands who has a duty to share beauty with the world because talent is a gift from the above. Growing up in California at age 11, I asked my parents, well, my dad, about indigenous Taiwanese history, and my father mentioned that you need to go and locate the Dutch East India Company's records and maybe the Maritime Museum in Amsterdam. I didn't know where Amsterdam was at that moment, but it sparked a roadmap in uncovering hidden histories. Similar to many places around the world, southern Taiwan was impacted by the Dutch East India Company, the VOC's empire building project in the early 17th century. In 1635, the Dutch East India Company waged a violent campaign called Pax Hollandica, meaning Dutch peace, to suppress the indigenous resistance. I created this piece shown here in the form of a gunpowder horn, reflecting on the irony of warfare being used to impose peace. The Dutch East India Company, the VOC, founded in 1602, was the first multinational corporation with state power, including military authority. The Dutch West India Company, the WIC, formed in the year 1621, led to the establishment of New Amsterdam, now New York City. Many of the board members of these two companies overlapped, and at its peak, the Dutch controlled global trade networks. Last year was another historic milestone, the 400th anniversary of the founding of the colony of New Amsterdam at the lower tip of Manhattan. It was also 400 years of Dutch Formosa, where the Dutch occupied southern Taiwan. The Dutch consulate in New York recently launched an initiative called Future 400 that seeks to examine these histories with honesty and integrity. They featured Pax Hollandica on the cover of the event brochure, to my surprise. So, how did I get involved in supporting Native New York public history storytelling? As an Asian diasporic artist, my commitment to solidarity grew from researching East Asian migration to Peru, leading an art incubator with indigenous, Black, and Mestizo creators in Ecuador, and working with the Public History Project, the Hemispheric Institute, and the Asian Pacific American Institute at NYU. In 2015, I began working allyship with Native culture bearers in New York through the Wayfinding Project. In collaboration with historians, technologists, ecologists, and culture bearers, we use virtual reality as a collective envisioning tool to reflect culture bearers' perspectives, resulting in an interactive VR experience depicting pre colonial realities and reimagining the ecofutures of Manhattan. We chose to use VR because elders wanted their future generations to one day be able to meet them in VR. Each project reflected a growing demand from culture workers, teachers, and the general public for educational and cultural resources on early New York history and entry points to honor original peoples and the land. These experiences have shown me where cultural diplomacy can propel change and nurture intra community kinship. In parallel, I was also working with my Banda working group looking at interrelated colonial violence committed by the Dutch East and West India companies that link New Amsterdam to Indonesia and even Suriname. My Manhattan Atoll Two Islands project examines how Manhattan was traded for the nutmeg rich Brune Island of the Banda Archipelago. In 2021, our working group launched an international roundtable series to commemorate 400 years of the genocide of 15,000 Bondanese people under the hands of the VOC in their pursuit of monopolizing the nutmeg trade. This work has connected me to anti colonial collaborators connected to the Netherlands, Indonesia, Taiwan, Suriname, and New York. Many of these collaborators of mine are movers and shakers connecting civic and academic institutions to people led movements. Having worked with sites and communities impacted by global Dutch colonial enterprises, when curator Rebecca Klassen at New York Historical Society, as we said, as a BGC alumna, invited me to be NY New York Historical's artist in residence. I suggested, could we possibly try to address the 400 years anniversary of the founding of the colony of New Amsterdam? And so the exhibition title, When Our Rivers Meet, was inspired by a conversation with elder Mikhailin Picaroman of the Rampo Lenape Nation that said in her culture, the place where two rivers meet is a sacred place. And Manhattan is embraced by two rivers. So the title is a call to all of those who came to the exhibition to listen to each other empathetically. So I'm going to begin by thinking about sharing with you the process of the exhibition. And I'm going to start with this map that deeply unsettled me. I respond to this map by Dutch cartographer Fisher, who depicted people in places that he never traveled to or met. Notably, he shows Europeans as conquerors and non Europeans either engaging in cannibalism or dressed in very stereotypical clothing that he made up. I was very challenged by this influence wielded by these early map makers, so I made this work called Hallucinating in the After Image of Empire. I printed Fisher's map on linen to reference ship sails and embroidered on Dutch East and West India Company's trade routes and used metal leaf to mark star forts to denote a landscape of control. I also collage images of spices generated, or shall I say, hallucinated by AI. I prompted AI using Midjourney with words related to Dutch trade to reveal the depths to which the Dutch trade influenced contemporary visual culture, as AI sources data from Dutch illustrations created during the Golden Age that are available on the internet. Some AI prompt terms that I use included beaver, spices, sugarcane, delftware, and many more. So that's why we have this beaverish image rodent generated by AI. The term hallucination here references how AI often fabricates images and presents them as factual, even though many of the generated images are approximative, similar to the many illustrations of non European flora, fauna, and people that were generated and widely circulated by the early map makers of the early modern period. One of the exhibition cases focuses on global trade and its impact. There is this print in there by Willem Blau, one of the official VOC cartographers, that sets the stage, a political theater represented by the four continents' female allegorical figures, where Europe, Asia, Africa, and America are represented on a high social hierarchy. Blau also created some of the first globes that, while beautiful objects, are symbols of domination, power, and conquest. So I reinterpreted Blau's celestial and terrestrial globes into sugar and spice bowls, and they actually open and close to reflect on patterns of power in search for resources since the age of, quote, exploration. Furthermore, the gold is not real gold, but a composite metal leaf called Dutch gold, which is a bastardization of Deutsch gold. It mimics gold and is a commentary on the Dutch Golden Age and the layers behind what first meets the eye. The case also shows a real nutmeg and mace from the Banda Islands to remind visitors that Henry Hudson accidentally arrived in Manhattan in search of Asia's spices. I also interpreted a Tiffany bonbon server in New York Historical's collection as a Dutch West India Company bonbon server with tobacco leaf motifs to tie together ideas of commodities in a Dutch trade such as sugar, tobacco, gold, and cacao. Now, in developing the exhibition, Rebecca and I also looked at New York Historical's archives for instances where New York City commemorated Dutch history, and we found folders from the 1909 Hudson Fulton celebration that celebrated 300 years of Henry Hudson's arrival during his search for a shortcut to Asia's spices on behalf of the VOC, and 102 years of Fulton steamboat technological marvels coming down the river. It was a 2 week extravaganza with 54 parade floats and fireworks throughout the skies, and it was all throughout the state of New York. It was meant to indoctrinate new immigrants about American history. It was a what I like to call an imperialist didactic theater. History was framed through four periods in this parade. It was the Indian, Dutch, English, and the US modern periods. Obviously, this is problematic and insulting to Native peoples for past tensing Native existence. Furthermore, the people shown here are in red face. Another example was this float design titled First Vessel Built in Manhattan, which dismisses the long standing canoe cultures along the eastern seaboard. It became clear that an alternative commemoration was necessary to respond to the Hudson Fulton celebration. I wanted to also play with the word parade, which in French, parade, also means to block, to ward off, to parry as a counter move in sports. It also means to answer evasively, elegantly, and gracefully. So I showed archival materials to 9 local and global culture bearers whose heritages were impacted by Dutch colonialism to think together on how we could tell a fuller story together. Following many listening sessions to each culture bearer while examining archives, I used virtual reality sculpting, a process where I kind of describe as using digital clay to render sculptures or 3D models that reflect each person's vision. There were many back and forths and drafts to ensure that consent is baked into the process and that I accurately represented our shared visions. So, for example, I got to have the pleasure and honor of sculpting Teresa Vega, who's here in the front row's ancestors and portraits, and she signed off on it. We envision a future parade, right, that celebrates empathy, reciprocity, and shared existences. And then I then 3D printed the objects, followed by a very, very intensive process of polishing, sanding, painting, building, and metal leafing. Hence, I don't really have a lot of fingerprints left. So I'm going to fast forward because I want to show you the result was this wavy-like vitrine of small but powerful parade float maquettes representing our alternative commemoration. The first float was made with Brent Stonefish, whose family traces to Upper Manhattan, yet now reside in Ontario, Canada, following centuries of forced migrations and enduring massacres. We imagine an alternative timeline, asking if the Dutch and the Lenape had cooperated, what type of world would we live in now? Brent wanted me to make a new seal for Manhattan that uses the original name Manhattanan. Can we say that together? Manhattanan. Thank you. This is a term used by the sole surviving first language speaker of his community, Auntie Diane Snake. He wanted me to change the way the current seal focuses on 2 stiff men, a Dutch and a Lenape, flanking a windmill and beavers in reference to the fur trade. Lenape culture, Brent says, is matriarchal, so he asked me to replace the men with women. Those he wanted to show the women who have the power to give life and how they're teaching children to respect the tree of life. The seal is also sitting on top of a turtle in reference to the idea that North America is also called Turtle Island, and that given Manhattan was a point of first contact with the Dutch, it's a baby turtle. So we're on the baby turtle's back right now. Now, with Chief Vincent Mann and Mikhailin Picaro Mann of the Ramapo Lenape Nation, they wanted to tell the world that despite enduring many hardships, including massacres, displacements, and even being guinea pigs of the eugenics movement, their community remains in the region and never abandoned their home. The transparent trees shown here represent the Muhukemenshi tulip trees, the trees to make canoes, that were cut down but whose spirits remain strong. During their residency, we also explored New York Historical's collection of allegorical depictions of the 4 continents. The female personifications of America, Europe, Africa, and Asia appeared in an array of media in Europe from the 1570s onward. These images often imply hierarchy, with Europe portrayed as queenly and victorious, often dominating animals. They also perpetuated negative stereotypes and exoticized non Europeans, although unevenly. For example, Asia is dressed in luxuriously decadent fabrics, always holding incense and riding a camel. Africa is shown undressed, riding an alligator. America is also shown undressed, holding a bow and arrow, riding an armadillo. The title of the print on the right translates into America groans in distress. Queens-based artist Tecumseh Caesar of Matinicok, Unkachag, and Montaukett Nation was upset by the depictions of animals in the 4 continents imagery. Harnessed and ridden upon by personifications representing the continents, these worldviews contrast with the teachings in his community, which see nature and animals as equal to or elevated above humans. So we created a carousel with the animals, but we made them clear, spectral, emancipated from their condition, while humans remain in color in the present timeline. Now, genealogist and family historian Teresa Vega Hi, Teresa. You want to wave your hand? Researches her Afro Indigenous heritage. She says her work is ancestrally guided. Her ancestors include Abraham van Sallee, an early Moorish Dutch settler in New Netherland, one of the first enslaved Angolans arriving in 1627, Munsee Lenape people, and Taino people from the Caribbean. Titled Writing with My Ancestors While We Spill the Tea, three generations of ancestors accompanying Vega while sharing stories of the past. At the reins is Thomas Thompson, a formerly enslaved stagecoach driver who delivered mail in New York and New Jersey while operating the Underground Railroad. Teresa found within New York Historical's collection several certificates of freedom signed by her ancestor, Thomas Thompson. In the back, her mother sits with Antonia Toon Snyder, who ran from her as slaver twice. Teresa, thank you so much for allowing me to work with you on this project, just once again. With the artist and professor Deborah Jack, who is from St. Martin, we wanted to surface the circulations of people, culture, and goods between New Amsterdam and the Caribbean. Peter Stuyvesant, the famous peg-legged director of New Netherland, actually lost his leg in Deb Jack's family beach, which speaks to the networked eastern seaboard that we rarely think about. Dutch West India Company was mainly interested in the Caribbean for salt. Deborah says that salt is the least acknowledged colonial commodity. So for this piece, titled Gilded Embers and Salted Entanglements, we use salt as a metaphor for the bodies of enslaved people who perished in the Atlantic. Inspired by 17th century Dutch still life paintings, the tableau's cannon shaped salt cellars hold crystals from the Caribbean and upstate New York to represent the red and black Atlantic. Within many African diasporic cultures, salt also has healing and cleansing powers, so this piece is an altar to clarify history. Netherlands based cultural historian and writer Nancy Yahweh and heritage professional and curator Wim Manuhutu traced their heritages to Papua and Maluku, the region where nutmegs came from originally. They were thinking about the symbol water vessels in Dutch, Bandanese, and Lenape culture. We ended up reinterpreting this Dutch engraving showing the right of a Bandanese Kora Kora canoe that was used in war, trade, and cultural celebrations, and I added all islands connect underwater to highlight our shared existences. I imagined that the Bandanese canoed across the oceans to partake in this commemoration in the spirit of solidarity. Amsterdam based artist and curator Raoul Balai has a Surinamese background and wanted to highlight how New York and Amsterdam have shared heritages. Emerging through the arc are two under-recognized early settlers of New York who are of mixed race lineages. Anthony Van Sallee is Moorish Dutch and settled in Brooklyn. Juan Rodriguez worked for the West India Company and came to Santo Domingo and was possibly of Portuguese and West African descent. He was left on Manhattan by the company in 1613, purportedly married a Lenape woman, learned the language, and when the company returned, he served as a translator. There are children on this piece who are wearing VR headsets, right? You see on the right. They're looking at history through a 360-degree perspective. For the astute observers, on the New York City side, there's a pizza rat, and on the Amsterdam side, which you can't see here, there's a pigeon pooping on a windmill. And that was Raoul's artistic direction. Speaking of VR, virtual reality headsets, while I was looking at other toys and games and New York Historical's collections with Rebecca, we were very fascinated with paper peep shows. They're kind of accordion like tunnel books that, when you expand them very fully, reveal a whole new world within. So I kind of like to think about them conceptually as ancestors of virtual reality, and they kind of serve as a metaphor for decompressing history. This inspired a paper peep show depicting the alternative parade my collaborators and I co envisioned together. Reflecting on a journey of research into collections, I worked with my partner, Alexandre Jardot, to create the museum's library in a virtual environment wherein the parade comes to life. So, New York City's foundations are rooted in multiple heritages, some of which have been overlooked. As the city entered its 400th year last year, this project celebrated New York's many lineages while strengthening intra-community alliances locally and globally. Both Rebecca and myself, I'd like to say, are Asia Pacific Americans, striving to work in solidarity with communities outside of our perceived communities of origin. This work, well, is really gratifying also often renders us invisible within Asian American communities and beyond. But I still, to a certain extent, believe that the struggle is worth it because we need more coalition building. The subtext of this alliance intends to disrupt the scarcity mindset and centuries old historical patterns wherein Asians have been instrumentalized as a racial buffer group in opposition to natives and blacks throughout the Americas. By centering allyship and amplifying narratives about survivance and solidarity through oral and archival family histories, the Parade for All opened up accessible stories that hopefully moves us toward more historically informed futures. Here is another installation view with collection objects that inspired me, and to the right is a work on linen. In the spirit of healing, this piece takes a puzzle called A Dissected Map of the US, where the puzzle box cover showed an Auntie Sam figure teaching a Native woman about the new American geography. Rebecca and I pieced together the puzzle and found that there was a road map on the other side. Surprise! So Rebecca ordered a high-res photo of the puzzle, and I printed it on linen and used suture stitching and painted the cracks in the map with the kintsugi-inspired method. Kintsugi is a Japanese art form of repairing broken ceramics with gold and lacquer. This vision of unrolling through bridging and reparative processes is our collective responsibility. A lot of storytelling is about transmitting ideologies to future generations, so I made baby rattles that play with civic symbols as well as symbols held by the four continent allegorical figures. This was a response to a lavish silver plated rattle with coral teethers made for elite European American children, shown on the top. And I made this baby rattle called an inheritance with a globe at the center with a spectral coral. This is an invitation for younger generations to shake up outdated ideologies. There were touchable versions for exhibition visitors to play with as well. After closing When Our Rivers Meet last August, I still wanted to respond to the collections. Oh my god, Rebecca's like, no more. On my mind was this late 19th century French print that names Oceania as the fifth part of the world. As Europeans' knowledge of geography expanded, artists adapted personifications of the continents to different cultural agendas. Drawing from this visual history that has and continues to shape human nature and hegemonic relations, and thinking about how children responded enthusiastically to the carousel parade float maquette that I did with Tecumseh Caesar, I knew that the liberated spectral animals had a mission. This mission became very clear when ICA San Diego commissioned me to create a mobile teaching object that complements California's school curriculum. Since this program began 10 years ago, teaching artists have brought art education to over 50,000 underserved kids. With my partner Alex, we created a large board game called Finding Magic Turtle, Unpacking the Four Continents. Everything packs neatly into a custom made wooden trunk. The contents include the animals of the four continents as game pieces, as well as reproductions of historic prints, trivia game cards, a reference packet, and even a spinning wheel. The story goes like this. One night, all the four continent animals woke up, drenched in sweat, unable to sleep. Turns out the AC was broken. There were loud clings and clangs coming from the machine. They were all so tired, but they just couldn't find sleep. In a massive group text around the world, they learned from the elephant's aunts, cousins, neighbors that their friend, Magic Turtle, who lives far away this place, they think it's called Oceania, knows a thing or two about how to fix the AC. So they all embark on a journey to find Magic Turtle. By engaging in a conversational trivia game, the animals sail on outrigger canoes, wayfinding from island to island, searching for magic turtle. Along the way, they learn about dispelling cultural myths about the Sea of Islands, learn about contemporary cultural perspectives, develop more care and understanding about ecological realities of life in Oceania, and how islanders are actively protecting the environment in face of rising sea levels. The game is non competitive and rewards kids to be collaborative and build on each other's knowledge. They eventually arrive and find Magic Turtle near the Marshall Islands, but only get to hear Magic Turtle's encouraging message after everyone has arrived. We just made this game and are very curious how it's going to play out in the classroom context, but we're very excited to keep on building upon this and support more positive learning and relating experiences. We recently got to speak with an educational counselor professional who's told us that this was great because if kids, in her opinion, could learn more correct values and receive guidance about collaboration early on, we as a society would suffer from less mental health challenges, which was very encouraging to us to continue along this road. The journey to bring the four continent animals to get to know a bit more about Oceania is also a result of another older body of work that my friend and olfactory scholar Professor Sean Shu has referred to as the Botanical Intimacies of Empire, an homage to Lisa Lowe's Intimacies of the Four Continents in 2017. For the past decade, I've been looking at stories of environmental extraction, the colonial experience, through the social history of plants, with a focus on nutmeg, mace, and tobacco. I was asking how is it that the taste for aromatic spices spiraled into global trade networks, motivated the colonization of countless lands and the discovery of the Americas? Are Magellan, Columbus, Hudson, and Raffles spice hunters or great explorers? What does colonialism smell like? This led to an installation at Remerica Parfumeur, a fake perfume boutique in a Chilean shopping mall that engaged the viewers through sight and smell to look at the social history of plants. America is a play on aroma and America, and parfuma means perfumer, or breaks down into parfum, through the smoke. Through the smoke lies the origins of America, as native people of Hispaniola gave Columbus tobacco gifts. I intervene in decorative art forms by layering on archival images to reveal the impacts of unresolved historical trauma, whose open wounds are repackaged as hauntingly manicured luxury. I invite viewers to draw connections between the aesthetics of colonial desire, the exploitative global trade histories that have shaped our interwoven social, economic, and environmental challenges. In 2017, I was invited to exhibit at the Jamesby Duke House, a millionaire row mansion in Manhattan's Upper East Side across the park. It is also the former family home of Doris Duke and the Institute of Fine Arts NYU. This mansion was built from the revenue of the American Tobacco Company. I exhibited a series of digital prints on mock silk that each tell a social history of a plant that transformed the world. This piece shown here is Tobacco, where a red-faced pinup irreverently blows tobacco smoke at ships filled with enslaved people and reference to the horrors of the transatlantic space. This piece is called Banda Islands Archipelago, Nutmegs and Cloves, in the mansion's smoking room. Following the exhibition and the house that rose from smoke, I spent a lot of time trying to grasp smoke. I researched at the Smithsonian Institution looking at the visual culture of tobacco smoke as a sacred medium, a luxury item, as well as heteropatriarchal puffs in the smoking rooms where decisions were made by a few elites. A widely misunderstood plant, tobacco is a sacred Native American plant that, upon commodification, motivated the English to finance a floundering English colony of Jamestown. This set forth a violent chain of events, including dispossession of native peoples, the creation of a nightmarishly successful plantation economy that was powered by enslaved people and enriched a few merchants and planters. Rising smoke, once a line of communication to the creator, ironically became interwoven fibers of an inequitable global economy. This is a $2 bill in the Smithsonian National Numismatic Collection and shows Sir Walter Raleigh showing the English court how to smoke. It's quite the IPO launch of its day. Gold and silk smoke interwove a global market as tobacco was used for trade across ports to purchase luxury products and fellow humans. It also inspired decorative art forms. Through inhalation, people exchanged with the sacred Native American plant intimately across vast distances. I found very telling Euro-American snuff boxes with blackamoors, using anonymized and stereotyped black bodies in decorative and subservient ways that, borrowing from Dr. Anne Lin Chang's word, ornamentalizing them in ambiguous Asian, black, indigenous styling. Using tobacco revenue from enslaved labor and native land, colonial elites in America purchased luxurious objects from Asia, including silk, hookah pipe, and fine porcelain. This piece is titled Colonial Desire and is in part inspired by George Washington's shopping list for his, quote, Chinaman, who was not Chinese, but procured these objects for him. This process of looking at many collections opened my eyes to many forms of polymorphous emissions, including the usage of smoke in rituals and worship, as well as the gunpowder that transformed military tactics, the steam, vapor, and coal factory smokestacks, greenhouse gas emissions, the smokeless smoke of vapes, vaporless digital clouds, bombings that replaced peace pipes, pepper spray attacking peaceful protesters and migrants, miasmatic smoke and mirrors, our nebulous present. From there, I started my work of interpreting and breathing new meaning into collections, as many cultural institutions grappled with questions of relevance and inclusivity. This is an installation shot of my exhibition, Once the Smoke Clears at Baltimore Museum of Art, curated by Sarah Cho. These pieces shown in the middle were inspired by historic urn-like tobacco jars that were once used to store tobacco. The series is titled Ashes to Ashes and references both the jars and the literal morbidity of the history of this plant and the toxicity has come to represent under colonial commerce. Through collections-based projects, I started to think about the agency of projects, the stories they carry, and following dialogues with Wayne Modest and Maya Nuku. The importance of not putting a burden on objects asked them to perform historical and or institutional guilt, especially when it comes to the questions of rematriation. Many of the decorative art objects that I reinterpret are luxurious objects with darker backstories. I'm attracted to and repulsed by them. I'm guilty of liking guilt. From that arose my work in progress, Guilt, a performance installation imagined as a speculative auction whose hauntingly luxurious collectibles reveal cascading impacts of colonial violence and environmental extraction. It also has an accompanying mock auction catalog co-developed with researcher, writer, and art historian Jong-Ah Kim in the room with us today. It is a repository of ideas about objects I've seen in private and public collections. By printing digital files of tobacco paraphernalia into physical existence, in a way, solidifies conceptual ethers into this physical reality. It's also about spectacles, facades, veneers, surfaces, and fakes. It is also about blurring fact and fiction for collective reflection. Set in the year 2068, the EOS 10 to the 15th power is a quadrillionaire family that is doing an estate sale in order to relocate into a remote bunker as the Earth has become increasingly uninhabitable through environmental degradation, widespread social unrest, and ceaseless waves of global pandemics. Since their vast wealth derives from 17th century spice wars, the tobacco trade, as well as the deep financial ties to the military industrial complex, the family's possessions reflect their virulent capitalist heritage and consumption driven lifestyle over generations. Around the year 2065, the family contracts an auction house, Nico and Tang, to help them downsize. Good evening. I'm the auctioneer, the specialist, and the artist. Can you hear me in the back? Welcome, please come in. We appreciate that many of you flew from afar to join us today. So, as a courtesy, we are offering complimentary refreshments at the conclusion of this evening's program, as well as valet jet parking and Nico and Tan's private hangar. You may not recognize me, as I only joined Nikontan 3 years ago in 2065 to support the research of the collection of the EOS 10 to the 15 power, of which I am thrilled to share some highlights with you during this evening's preview. Be sure to refer to Nikontan's latest auction catalog for this fall 2068 September evening sale. We hope following this preview, you will choose to include us in your September itinerary. Now, at any moment throughout this preview, you can request additional details on any of the items from the AI assistant who registered you for this event via nicoandton.com. And I want to remind you that the currency that we are using today is not the US dollar, but it's the CMW Commonwealth on the cryptocurrency exchange. So make sure you also are clued into that detail. Now, who are the EOS 10 to the 15 power? It signifies 15 zeros. Isn't that beautiful? They are the first quadrillionaires of the 21st century. Their wealth exceeds the plutocrats of the last Gilded Age. Quite fabulous, aren't they? I see some nods, I agree. They have been very protective of their privacy. And in the past decades, they have managed to scrub much of their information and traces from the internet. Our team of researchers did some historical forensics in archives around the world, including the Smithsonian, the Dutch National Archives, the Metropolitan Museum, and the New York Historical to piece together some of the information about this family. They are nicknamed the Empire of Smoke because they made their wealth in the 17th century spice trade, followed by really hitting it big with the tobacco trade during the founding of the American Empire, and following that, investing in military innovations. We'll begin with a series of objects originally kept in the family's apothecary. This star lot features a rare gourd-shaped snuff bottle and gilded brass spoons attached to the caps, thought to be made for a member of the Chinese imperial court. The experience of the craftsman in the palace workshops is flaunted through the application of exquisite hand gild on the enamel, which is laid over carved glass. Directly traceable to the Jesuit missionary who led the glass workshops in the palace and historical records, the bottles are subversive in their depiction of the tobacco flower, since possession of tobacco, and thus a private luxury, that was unlikely to have been displayed to anyone outside the prince's most intimate household members. The bottle would have held different types of snuff, possibly even the most high quality Brazilian brand that was gifted to the emperor in 1714. The second lot is a commemorative piece presented to the EOS. The design replicates the handmade Dutch clay pipes that were fashionable in the Hudson Valley during colonial times. The image on one side comes from a banknote issued by the presenter of the pipe, Timber Cutters Bank, Georgia, while the other image shows a Treasury Department engraving of George Washington. It is thought that the pipe was a gift from the bank to the family, as they were major depositors and investors in the regional tobacco industry. A puff of ashless smoke emanating, thank you, I love your humor in the room, emanating from the now ubiquitous cartridges is an iconic image of the early 21st century that remains very fashionable. The ever-enterprising EOS commissioned a prototype vape as early as the 20th century, which became the basis for subsequent popular models. Their elegant design was widely copied throughout the rest of the world. The limited edition vape has stylish historic details commemorating the family's connection with the trade of tobacco. The blue pattern on the porcelain shell is a detail taken from tax stamps from the 1870s featuring the family's workers on tobacco plantations. The richness of the family history can be tasted through the smoke encapsulated in these devices. Any tobacco connoisseurs in the room? I believe we have some. I see one right here in front. Well, I think you will love these tobacco jars. This is a special commission by the EOS of Delft blue and white bronze mounted lidded jars from 1899. Created for display in the smoking room, the image depicts manifestations of the deep link between tobacco and the growth of the American regime. According to the National Numismatic Collection researchers, these images that were printed are from old New York banknotes. And the smoker's image on the bottom of the jar was commissioned by the U.S. Treasury. It's called the smokers. Now, the source image on this jar is titled Our Game and features a cowboy and a native person depicted in childlike style. They're playing a card game. How fun. A closer look shows a cowboy holding all the aces. This image is from a tobacco advertisement by Smead & Co. in 1899. The white Amor candelabra, amazing, is a commission by a family member on a trip to Europe as part of a delegation led by the largest landowners of the colonies to negotiate the terms of the trade. The brilliance of the work lies in the details. The lees held by the man are the tobacco and hemp crops on which the foundations of the empire were built. And the torch is a fully functioning container for oil. It has been suggested that the likeness of the man is similar to that of the well-known Stone family of Maryland, perhaps Thomas Stone, who was the youngest member of the Maryland state delegation to sign the Declaration of Independence. Impressive. These rare ashtrays are made in the shape of forts and citadels that were built throughout numerous colonies. They function as both warehouses and defended the colony's interests. These ashtrays were possibly commissioned on special occasions and gifted to company shareholders for their support of the colonial enterprises. We will now look at the lots that were on display in the family parlor. Any golf lovers in the room? Oh, you just came back from a game, I see. Well, these were cuffed and golf tees made to encourage the family tradition of entrepreneurship and savvy wealth management. If you look closely, on one side it says winner takes all. And on the verso, it says the oligopoly club, the root word for oligarch. Quite the tradition, isn't it? I see some club members in their room. The family had several residences throughout the Southeast Asia region due to company's activities, and it's believed that one of the daughters was particularly enchanted by Indonesian Chris daggers and ordered because they were used in exotic ceremonial events. How cool. So she commissioned this dagger to be used as a letter opener. What is particularly exquisite is the handle. Notice a fossilized praying mantis suspended in amber. Judging from the size of this youth rifle, it was probably made for a female child, most likely a beloved daughter of the EOS, so that she could practice her hunting skills alongside adults during leisure retreats at Highland, Perthshire, Scotland. Royal and aristocratic women throughout history exemplified independent spirit, self-reliance, and wit through finessing their sharpshooting skills. This beautiful lightweight rifle is perfect for a growing hunter to experience the thrills of pursuing game that is central to heritage of the hunters. The rifle's barrels are made from gun-quality steel, their stocks made from carved ivory embellished with hand-painted floral details. The body is decorated with brass gold, as are the grips. As a major shareholder of a historic firearm company, the EOS was presented with this rifle in 1893 for the 20th anniversary of an 1873 model that is famous for being called the gun that won the West. Now this, the Pax Hollandica aroma diffuser, exudes a scent that evokes the scenery of the pristine island of Formosa, Taiwan, upon discovery, as documented in Dutch and Portuguese travel and missionary journals. It's a modern 21st century scent that initially greets with calming notes of gunpowder tea, sweet coconut, and elegant white champaca, followed by a blast of betel nut, lime, tobacco, and hinoki forest. Altogether, these scent notes are encapsulated within a special edition fragrance diffuser commissioned on the 400th anniversary of the Grand Convention Landag on Formosa, today's Taiwan. that celebrated the dawning era of Pax Hollandica, the Dutch pacification campaign of Formosa, following the Dutch defeat of the Matau village with gunpowder muskets. For the EOS 10 to the 15th power, this historic event heralded the strengthening of the family's ties to the Dutch East India Company as they were able to receive repayment of their loan and rewards for their investment. Deeply inspired by her own family history, around 2045, one of the heiresses commissioned a series of silk garments that included this heirloom as a detail. Here it is in the heiress's entertaining salon. The collection of haute couture garments in this section represents a fraction of the exciting styles in the wardrobes of an EOS heiress who was a well-known influencer and fashion maven. These hand-embroidered silk and patterns are the result of painstakingly done historical research by this family member. They reflect a celebration of a long history, a Western celebration and exploration of the globe by depicting historical artifacts related to Dutch rule of the land, as well as iconic plants of the family trade. During summer entertaining season, guests will be invited to wear the capes and lounge and relax. Another socialite of the family was a celebrated painter living in a mega loft in Williamsburg around the late 2010s. Her series of smoke paintings were widely acclaimed, and they were a nod to her Empire of Smoke heritage. Gorgeous. I want one. Now we're going to look at jewelry and perfume lots. Are we ready? Yeah, okay, great. Now, here are prime examples of the family's Ghost Amore jewelry. The pendant is a rare example of craftsmanship from Italian workshops in Venice. I like to go there. The sculptured features of the woman displays a strong neoclassical influence that was prevalent. Her transparency is intentional, according to records of the EOS Commission found in the Murano workshop, to reflect the omnipresent spectral traces of the family's trading network. On the brooch to the right are rare, color-changing Russian alexandrite stones, beautifully complemented by South African sapphire, a Russian demantoid garnet, and I'm told there's even a morganite in there, added afterwards in a repair named after J.P. Morgan. This exceptional item adds mysterious glamour to the Italian set, and I'm sure will bring a lot of glamour to your new wardrobe. Some of you may be too young to recall this event, but I do. This mask was created in 2043 for the famous Feast of Smoke, held by the EOS family and their estate at the beginning of the second Ripple pandemics, which was attended by only the most select members of the world's elite society. The mask allows for the wearer to exude the scent of the materials inside the pomander while simultaneously barring undesirable environmental odors, fumes, pollutants, and contagions. The graphene-based filtration system is a prototype for the masks used by cutting-edge medical professionals today. As daredevil entrepreneurs, technological innovators, and original tastemakers since the spice trade, it is no surprise that the family's collection includes a series of very unique perfume flacons containing exotic rare perfumes. The EOS properties were curated bounties of botanical treasures collected from around the world, and they were able to source materials for their incredible scents from within the walls of their estates. This crystal rendition of the pineapple grenade contains a smoky concoction of burnt caramel, Madagascan vanilla, powdery iris, oud, aged leather, agar wood, and a light trail of ozone. The metal lid reveals a nutmeg. As one of the early investors in Singapore's nutmeg mania, the family was quite fond of Stanford Raffles, the first colonial governor of Singapore. They were instrumental in advocating for the world's largest flower, Rafflesia, also known as a corpse flower, for its distinct sweet odor, to honor their friend's legacy throughout Southeast Asia, as well as their shared love of natural history. Centuries later, they even commissioned this Rafflesia pomander to celebrate the success of their early investments. From the early 2030s, the most prestigious households around the world have been guarded by biosensor technology created under the umbrella of the EOS. This is the first generation biosensor that started the now common trend of using individuals' unique scents to provide identification for security purposes. Heralding from the Southeast Asian branch of the EOS R&D arm, it takes the form of the odorous corpse flower. Guests at the EOS mansion were welcomed by the cheerful flower at the entrance of the smoking room. Guests to the EOS home may have also played with this golden parachute, a custom piece imported from Kyoto, Japan. The silk parachute is embroidered with Kyoto Nishinjin 18-karat gold leaf thread. EOS children would take turns holding the corners of the parachute, tossing a golden ball into the air and have it roll around. The tobacco flower motif decoration is a nod to the Chinese characters used to describe tobacco smoke, Jingsiyan golden silk smoke. While it was a toy for use and play, it alludes to the EOS business history as silk and tobacco traders and investors in the Cheney Brothers Silk Manufacturing Company in Connecticut, which later made parachutes for the Air Force in the Second World War. Here's a detail of the silk parachute, and you can take a look later as well at the sampler. The final lot now, are we ready for this, is a spare luxury bunker, the dreams, at an undisclosed location. Built in 2038, it boasts 14 levels of spacious living and entertaining quarters. The property boasts of state-of-the-art robot-operated medical spas, indoor farms, innovative smart appliances, heated indoor pools, and jet ski simulators will ensure an entertaining and comfortable stay. Food and water reservoirs with reverse osmosis mechanisms can sustain a family and staff of 25 or so for about 5 years. If interested, please inquire Nikon Time's AI assistant for more information or if you'd like to book a viewing. This concludes this evening's preview. You can see many more lots in the catalog, and some of the lots are also on display to my left today. We look forward to having you join us in the fall if you choose to include us in your September itinerary. And also, I'll see you in the reception. Okay. Thank you, BGC, for inviting me to workshop this project. I want to thank Janelle for performing last minute, addressing me. I want to thank Andrew for making me be a little more brave and theatrical and try out this little catwalk. Now I want to do many of the installation shots I showed were taken during a residency in St. Joseph's Art Foundation in San Francisco. While the first 50 or so objects I made were more historically grounded, coming up next, I think things will get a little bit more futuristic and take a different tone. I'd like to bring this immersive performance installation to life. So if anyone has leads about spaces and venues, please get in touch. Now, we are in a time where public history is endangered. How can speculative fiction help resist historical amnesia? I don't want to make dystopic and absurdist objects for the next 4 years. By working in community, believing the possibilities of our future generations, my collaborators and I are thinking about guilt as a way to gamble and imagine a future vision that we want to all thrive in. I end with this image, also one that I got to study with Rebecca at New York Historical. It's a jester whose scepter says, "Vanity of vanities, all is vanity." In the tradition of Vanitas, it is laughing at humanity's short-sightedness, asking us to examine our very own limitations. I think of the artist who made this image many centuries ago and wonder if I can summon the same courage and wit. Thank you. I look forward to feedback, questions, maybe some provocations, and workshopping all these questions together. Thanks.
All right, if you have any questions, raise your hand.
I guess I'm just curious, what draws you to the VR sculpting as opposed to other, like, ways of 3D modeling?
Of course. Well, I have to say that first, I was always growing up doing drawings, and I was very scared of sculpting. I was always impressed by people who are very good at like working wood shop or ceramics. But then my partner, who is a VR technologist and creative person, got me into it. And I realized I could make almost any idea I have come to life with it. Then I realized that it's also a really adaptive tool where I can quickly take an idea, create a prototype, and share it with collaborators and get feedback and alter it. And so when it came time to collaborate with culture bearers such as Teresa Vega here, it was a really wonderful process where I showed her and all of our folks different drafts, and people would give me comments. So it was a very malleable tool. So in a way, it's adaptive, and I think a more democratic process of collaborating versus if I just went in my studio, made something, and said, like it, you don't like it, well, take it, right? Which could be if I spent too much time taking a precious material and making an object. So I find it to be a really malleable tool for that reason. And many other conceptual parameters come into play. But yeah, I hope that helps answer that question. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Hi, I really loved your performance and especially the video leading into the performance. I was curious as how sound and video affect your work and how sort of the soundscape of these imagined worlds, how you sort of come up with those or grapple with those.
I love your question, and I don't have the best answer because I am actually a tone deaf person. But I want to acknowledge I didn't get to do that. But I have really amazing artist friends in my life. So the first video that you saw that had the parade, that was with an artist called Pauchi Sasaki, who I've been friends with for over 20 some years. And she makes scores for films. And so she always gives me free reign to work with what I see fit with a lot of trust. So sometimes it just comes with making images and then editing while you're playing the music and letting them dance together. I don't really have a methodology in that sense. Now, the second one that you mentioned, that where I transitioned into this new character, it's by this really amazing French artist based in Montreal, Canada, who is a town of music. His name is Mourad Benasser. He's also an amazing music producer and curator, and he's also a long-term friend of Alex and I. And he also looked at some of our videos and gave us some to select from, and then we played with different snippets with trust. So it's a lot of it's about collaboration. That I have a shortcoming. I'm not musical. Only recent years I can sing some songs that I from my memory, but other than that, I can't play. But I have wonderful collaborators who each come in and share generously, and we build together. So it's really about the shape of collaboration. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Then please join me in thanking Beatrice Glow.
Thank you.